listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
What's up? How you doing? And thanks for checking out my show, Straight to Video. This is episode 301, and I want to say thanks so much to everyone who reached out about the milestone episode 300 a couple of weeks ago. So cool to get that one out there, and it feels like a real marker for this show. I mentioned future episodes might not be as regular as normal as I reconfigure the show format a bit, but as soon as that went out, a bunch of really cool interview opportunities came along, so I might say no, and one of them includes today's talk. They say ignorance is bliss, and once you stop chasing something so hard, then other things sometimes come into focus. Maybe that's it, or perhaps I just put word out there and things just fell into place. Who knows? But the next few podcast episodes are going to be a blast. And we start right now as I recently spoke to a broadcasting and presenting legend here in the UK, Mr. Mike Reid. It's impossible to place him into one category as he's been massively successful in several fields of entertainment, from being one of the country's biggest radio DJs since the late 70s to presenting some of our favourite TV shows growing up, from Saturday Superstore, Pop Quiz and of course Top of the Pops, whilst also being a successful author and songwriter. Today you can find him as big a music fan as ever, working on the Heritage Chart Show, which is an amazing platform which gives airtime to some of our favourite artists of the past few decades whose new music is often overlooked by other platforms. This always seems to be the case when a singer or a band, they have this massive hit back in the day which is so big it's unlikely they can once again match that success, so people instinctively return to the old hits rather than checking out what is usually some great new music. Mike and the Heritage Chart allow these great songs to be heard, and if you want to learn more, then everything can be found at www.heritagechart.co.uk. As always, this Straight to Video podcast is proudly presented to you in association with Affinity Photo. Affinity Photo is an incredible piece of photo editing software which I use all the time for graphic design. Affinity is used to create the podcast episode artwork you see each week, and what's also cool is that it's an extremely affordable alternative to other programs on the market, so please check them out at affinity.serif.com. Alright, let's get the first show of, let's call it, Chapter 3 of the Straight to Video podcast underway. So please sit back and enjoy my chat with broadcasting legend Mr. Mike Reid.
Hello, Rob, can you hear me?
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, got you coming through nice and clear.
Fantastic.
How's your day going?
Yeah, good. Like your art collection in the background, your Fender bass there, Steve. Very good.
Yeah, good spot. That's my jazz bass. I always think of it as a new bass. It's like early 2000s, but that's probably vintage these days.
Probably is, actually, yeah. Yeah, some of the old ones fetch a lot of money now.
I think that's a Mexican one. I'd love an American one, but the price tag on those is just insane.
I just had the best one. I had the Buddy Holly Foundation did handmade guitars. The Everleys got them and Paul McCartney and what have you. And brilliantly, I got one and they're worth about 10 grand each. And they're just fantastic guitars.
What are those in the background which you've got?
This one's one of those old 3/4 length one.
Oh, they're nice little guitars, aren't they, that size?
Yeah, this one's just one of those old blues ones, sort of, it's a 3/4 length old sort of 20s blues thing. So yeah, it's good.
Just pick it up and noodle on it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you taking some time to chat with me. It's very, very cool. So where are you at the moment, Mike? I'm coming to you from just in between Nottingham and Derby.
Okay. You're up there in the East Midlands area. I'm on the South Downs.
It looks nice and sunny in the background. We've been treated just lately.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'll be getting out there soon, playing a bit of tennis. So, yeah.
Did you ever do any road shows in the Nottingham Derby area back in the day, do you know?
Yeah, we did a teddy bear's picnic at Nottingham, but one of the stately homes there, Simon May and myself did it. And as well as the road shows around the coast, we did teddy bears picnics, and 20,000 people would arrive with their bears. And I remember at Nottingham, somebody said, trouble, and 20 Hells Angels came in on their bikes, but they all had teddy bears strapped to the front of them, which was great. And they all politely lined up with their bears. So, yeah, we did this teddy bears picnic, and we did one at Bewley as well. We did them all over the place. I think we did one at Longleat, and we'd all sing, the crowd would all sing, "If you go down in the woods today, you're sure of a big swell." So, 20,000 people singing this, probably deemed uncool now, but then nobody cared. We just had fun, really.
There's probably merchandise and everything for them things, weren't they?
Yeah, we didn't have bare merchandise because we only did them periodically, but the usual Radio 1 merchandise that Smiley Miley flogged to the crowd, yes, definitely.
I love it. You're now, if I've got this right, you're now in your 6th decade of broadcasting, I believe.
I started in March 76. So yeah, Steve Wright and myself started together, and then we were put together because of our names. Boss Neil French Blake said, "Well, I have you boys doing a program, Read and Write." We were, "Oh yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense." But we kind of knew what the other one was going to do. We were very good at that. We'd never socialized outside the radio, but we knew instinctively in the studio what the other was going to say and do. So rather than an arranged marriage, which a lot of radio programs are, where they just put people together, and it is like an arranged marriage, it doesn't necessarily work. But ours was a natural one, and it just worked. And, if Steve came out with a good line, I wouldn't try and be clever and top it. I go, "You take that one." So we worked very well together.
Do you remember when you first met and where it was?
It was just before the station started. He was staying in Thiel, just near Reading, and I'm not sure that he had a car. I had to go and pick him up really early morning, and we went in and had to do a trial, the two of us. Neil Freshbeck hadn't heard me on the radio at all, but we had to see if we could work everything. So we went in some sort of cold, very, very late February morning. And what we didn't realize is one of the engineers had accidentally left it switched on to broadcast. So we spent an hour and a half saying things like, "I'll tell you what, you cancel all the buses and I'll cancel all the trains." Yeah, okay. Because we're only practicing. It says, yeah, all the buses have been cancelled in the Reading area today. Yeah, and all the Thames Valley trains have been cancelled as well. Oh, and by the way, your dustbins won't be emptied. All this sort of stuff. We just make it up because we know we're not on air. We're only practicing. An hour and a half later, Neil French Blake came steaming in and he said, "You've been on air for an hour and a half. You've been talking gibberish for an hour and a half." And we thought, that's it. We're fired before we've even started. He then broke into this big smile and he said, "I'm proud of you boys." What? So we thought he was about to be fired. He said, "I'm proud of you." He said, "You were utterly, utterly gentlemen." He said, "You didn't swear. You didn't do anything like that. You had no idea you were on air and you behaved impeccably. I'm proud of you." Oh, we thought we were reinstated. We're rehired immediately.
Was that like some War of the Worlds thing then? People think that the buses are cancelled and the bins are going to be... Did people ring up to say what's going off?
Well, we didn't have a phone through to the studio then because it was like a week or 2 weeks before we were due to start. So we had no idea. Because of the early hour and there's nobody else there and the station hadn't started, we got there, opened it up and locked ourselves in. So I think there's only one other person that had a key because they weren't thinking about us being on air. So people had been trying to get in. And of course, we couldn't see out and it was soundproof. So we couldn't hear any noise, people shouting at us, and there wasn't a window. So people had been trying to get in to tell us that we were on air. And we were oblivious for an hour and a half until Neil French Blake, the only other one with a key, opened it and came in. So yeah, it was quite fun.
Right now, though, you're almost revisiting your Top of the Pops presenting days and can be found hosting the Heritage Chart Show, which I think it's such a cool concept. I believe it began as a radio show, but now grown into a TV format. Could you give people a bit of an overview of how that began and how it works? Because was you speaking to Lamar when the idea came into fruition?
Yeah, back in the spring of 2020, I was chatting with Lamar and he said, "Oh, thanks for playing my new single." I said, "It's a great track." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "But nobody else is playing it, only you." And we got chatting and, of course, talking with other people as well. Paul Young and Los Pacaminos' new single, Howard Jones, Toyah, Kim Wilde, Nick Kershaw. They said, "Well, yeah, you're playing our new stuff, but nobody else is." And I said, "Hang on, there's a platform here somewhere because you need a platform for all this new material." So in July 2020, I started the Heritage Chart on a voting system. 2 years later, we started TV, and that goes around the world. We get voting now from anywhere between 90 and 100 countries every week. It baffles me. And I look at the data and I think, who got up in Belize this morning or the Philippines and decided to vote for Mungo Jerry? I have no idea. But it's really quite interesting. And it's worked very, very well. It's an innovative idea, great platform for the artists. And there's a lot of artists that it's given them a reason to write songs. It's given them a reason to record, a reason to make a video. So for them, it's great. And then it's given them on their Wikipedia, they said, we've had 2 number ones on the Heritage Chart. So it's gone into the vocabulary, which is very, very nice. It's become part of the vocabulary and on people's Wikipedia, which is great.
I love the idea because a lot of people especially with older acts, they just immediately go back to listening to bands' older and more successful material. But a lot of times, while they are great songs, the bands back then, they had the big record label push to get things to the forefront. It wasn't just about having that great song. Today, though, it's even harder to make a noise. So to have an outlet such as the Heritage Chart, that's pretty amazing and very cool for them artists, I think. So I think it's a great platform for them, for sure.
I work with the artists and the labels and the PR people, so they all come through. I mean, this week we've got the top 40, which is packed with good songs. We've got the Breakers, which is about 30 other good songs in it. And then suddenly this week, like 14 other new songs, really good. And you think, my goodness, where are they all going to go? Absolutely fabulous. And, our listeners in the group saying, people are missing out on playing these because they're really, really good songs. We've just got to, monetize it a bit better, get out there, get some more people. There's always a job to be done. It's great having the concept. It's great creating something, having the idea, but then you've got to work with the logistics and the practicalities to actually make it work and get it to more people. Because a lot of people go, oh, really? I didn't know about that. It's the marketing as well.
I even learned something from the show. I'm a big fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street horror movies. And one of the actresses, Tuesday Night, is also a singer, and her latest song, Wonder of You, is doing really well on your chart right now. I didn't even know she had that new song out.
Yeah, and her dad wrote it.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until I found out. I didn't realise she had that pedigree or that history to her career, that her dad wrote the song for Elvis originally. So yeah, very, very cool.
I said we need a video, so she made a video and sent it over. Of course, PJ Probe is on it as well. And I thought, well, I emailed Jim and I said, look, why don't you do what she did? Get out in the garden with a guitar, you come in on the choruses, send me the film, and we'll ghost you in. And he's delighted with it. He said, wonderful, I'm part of it. This is wonderful. So we've ghosted him in and the choruses. So we work with the artists. It's not just playing the songs. We're creative with them as well.
I say a lot of these bands, they're perhaps making music just because they want to make the music these days as well. So it's a real genuine reason for people to be listening. Who's impressed you since doing the show with their new material?
Everybody. I mean, I've got 4 years worth of being impressed. And it's great when something comes from left field. I mean, you know the artists that are making good songs and they consistently do, like Peter Cox from Go West. You know they're going to come up with something good a lot of the time. But then something comes from left field, like last year or earlier this year. Ian Hunter from Mott the Hoople suddenly brought out this Bed of Roses song. I said, oh, wow, that's a real pop song. It's a really great song. And I couldn't wait to play it. And then people going, oh, I love that. I love that. And I think you get excited. There's so many good ones at the moment. Richard Hawley has got a great single out called Prism in Jeans. And I'm sure anyone else is playing it. It's a great track. It's the old trick that a lot of people have used, but he's used it to great effect of the major sixth to the major seventh back to the sixth. That thing a lot of people have used down the years, Bobby V did it on Run to Him, but a lot of people have used that. But he's used it to great effect on there. And the first time I thought, oh, can't wait to play it.
Has the show reconnected you with anyone from back in the day who you used to see in the radio or on the TV? Like, I've not seen you for 30 years.
Oh, no, not that long, because we do a lot together, or I've seen them at Rewind festivals, or, I write a lot of songs for people as well. So I'm working with a lot of people. But yeah, when we did this 4th anniversary show, I thought whenever we'd done any anniversary before, it was like people popping up going, yeah, congratulations, it's so-and-so here, well done, And I thought, let's do something different. I thought there hasn't been Top of the Pops since 2006. So let's do a Top of the Pops style show. We can't call it Top of the Pops, but we can say Heritage Chart Anniversary Show, Top of the Pops style. So you can get the name in there, but Top of the Pops style. It's cunning. And we had 16, 17 artists on it, which is great. Loads and loads of really good artists. P.P. Arnold's on there, the Flirtations, the Fierce are on there, Right Said Fred, Limahl. Marty Wilde's on there as well, Mungo Jerry, Peter Cox, so many good people on there, Katrina. So yeah, it worked really, really well. And we've got it out at the moment, 4th anniversary show. And it goes out on various TV platforms from, I think, this week or next week. But we've got it on our Facebook page. And do you know what is good, Rob, is I think back in the day, and I think most artists will probably admit to this, that their PR and their management, their record company, tried to make them be cool. They didn't know how many hits they were going to have. They might have had one hit. And it's like, oh, we going to have any more. So everyone had a bit of an ego and a nervous apprehension about where they were going, how they should behave, what they should say in an interview. So they were slightly wary of or being told by their PR. That band are number 5 at the moment. You're only number 18. And it's like, oh, are we going to have another hit? There was that trepidation and anticipation which is now dispersed. You know, when you see people now, everyone's mellowed and it's like, hello, mate. Oh, I love your song. Oh, I love yours as well. It's great. Everyone's grown up a bit, mellowed a bit, and are happy to appreciate each other's music. But I think back when you're much younger, everyone's not quite sure what to do, how to do it, when to do it, what to say.
I love the chart itself. It's broadcast on Thursday evenings like Top of the Pops originally was. Was that a conscious decision?
It goes out on one of the TVs. It goes out on XPTV1 across the UK, Europe, States and Canada on a Thursday at 8. The fourth anniversary one, we kicked off at 7:30 on a Thursday for that reason, yeah.
I love it.
It's still up there. You could watch it at any time. You can click in now and watch it, but he did the thing, 7:30 on Thursday.
That's like a lovely little, like they call Easter egg sort of thing. I mean, because that was such a huge deal. It always confused me when they moved Top of the Pops to a Friday, because that didn't make sense to me. Because when it was on a Thursday, you'd watch the show, then you'd talk to your mates about it at school on Friday, then you'd go out and buy the record on Saturday before the chart on Sunday. It just made perfect sense for like word of mouth. So that was like a proper game changer.
Absolutely right. I mean, back in the day, we get 14, 15, 16, 17 million sometimes watching it. Well, if you were on there and only a small percentage of people bought your record, you got a hit. No question about that. And because there weren't so many TV channels, you were on Top of the Pops. You know, maybe I played it on Radio 1 and Saturday morning TV, Saturday Superstore said, you know, we got to get some people in the city. Who are you playing? Well, so-and-so. Oh, we'll get them in. So we got them in on Saturday morning. So 10 million people saw their video or heard them play live or lip synced or whatever on a Saturday morning. So the record would start moving, go on to Top of the Pops, hit 15 million, and then we'd probably invite them onto Pop Quiz, which is another 10 million. So you have big programs and big audience figures. So if you're on Radio 1 Breakfast Show, Top of the Pops and those other shows, it really made your record take off. I remember having played Planet Earth twice by Duran Duran. I'd only played it twice. And I went into a pub in Weybridge and people always said, oh, could you say hello to me? Yes, yeah. So I put them in my pockets, loads of bits of paper, didn't look at them. Yeah, okay. And normally people say, could you say hello to Ron and Sue tomorrow morning from, Berkhamsted or whatever? And I said, yeah, put them in my pocket. Got them out in the studio the following morning. And I said to my producer, they're nearly all for Planet Earth, Duran Duran. It's going to be a monster. People normally didn't do it. They just said, could you say hello to so-and-so? But I said, they're nearly all for, I've only played it twice. I said, it's going to be massive. And of course it was. And everything like that since, when someone's gone, hello, I said, it's the Duran Duran moment. It's that moment when it's just taken off and got legs. You know yourself with the chart. PR, record company can push. And you only put it and they go, we pushed it quite a lot. And suddenly you think, oh, wait a minute, it's running off by itself. And suddenly it's climbing the chart by itself because it's found an audience. And it's a bit like that, really.
You mentioned that about you playing records and stuff. You was on the radio at a time, I guess, when you had the opportunity to choose bands to play. Was that ever a struggle, or did bosses put trust in you to pick what would work?
Yeah, a bit of both, I think, really. I mean, when I started on The Breakfast Show, I only thought I was going to get fired for the first 6 months from it. Not from the station, but from the program, because our boss would say, why are you playing nighttime music in the morning? Because DLT, still a great chum, spoke to him last night, had been doing The Breakfast Show, but he played more ABBA, sort of disco-y stuff, things like that. I'd come from the nighttime before John Peel and was playing maybe slightly edgier stuff, maybe, Adam and the Ants, Teardrop Explodes, not considered edgy now, but at the time, orchestral maneuvers. Oh, what are these things you're playing in the morning? This isn't morning music. Well, I'm sort of saying it is now. It's just good music. And I was saying, that's what you think, is it? I thought, oh dear, I'm riding a roller coaster here. But I was championing music that I loved. I remember one producer saying to me, and I stood in for somebody, he said, you had to pick a record of the week. And I said, I'll have Dire Straits, please. And he said, what, Sultans of Swing? I said, yes. Yeah. Why don't you pick something commercial? Why don't you pick something that's going to be a hit? I love it. And I said, but it's great. It's the best thing out there at the moment. Oh, no. And he gave me 2 other suggestions. I said, no, thanks. No, I really like that one. He said, well, on your head be it. So I was always fighting against the odds, and I always had a bag of records, and our boss would say, oh, what's in the bag? I said, nothing. He'd say, it's a bag of records, isn't it? And I said, yes. He said, all right. So there was a kind of playlist, but I always had reasonable ears in hearing good songs.
Was there a responsibility with that? With the listener figures, you could potentially change people's lives.
I don't think you think about that at the time. You just think whether the music's good, and you're like the kid down the street that's got a record that the other kid down the street wants to hear, knocks on the door and goes, "Hey, you got the Gary Newman album. Can I come in and listen to it?" "Oh, yeah. Oh, great. Total stranger, but you get excited by it." And I think it's that really. You're excited by the record. You want to put it on and you want the listeners to go, "Oh, I love that. Love that."
That's a great attitude to have. So you still do that now? You still get that excitement?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. When new things come, like this week, some really good new singles that, I can't wait to get back on tomorrow morning and play it. Yeah, absolutely.
It's often talked about that DJs back then were as much rock stars as the rock stars themselves. Was you comfortable with that, going from just a voice on the radio to becoming a recognisable face?
I think it's a gradual thing, but that's because it started on local radio. And the first day, nobody else on the station wanted to go down into the main butt centre in Reading because there were thousands of people. David Cassidy was flying in. I think Mark Bolan came down, and everyone was like, oh, no, I want to be in front of a crowd. So I went down there, torn apart by 1,000 people. They didn't want me. They wanted the T-shirts and the freebies and the stickers and David Cassidy and Mark Bolan. So I'm right in the thick of it. And I was brought back in a police car to drag me away from the crowd. And I thought, this is radio. This is showbiz. This happens every day. And it didn't. So you recognise you're out and about locally. So you kind of got used to that. Then when I went to Luxembourg, came back over here to do gigs, you got more used to it. And then when I did a series called Pop Quest, suddenly people go, "Oh, I've seen you. You're doing that thing on TV, aren't you?" So it was gradual. And then you're doing Top of the Pops and Pop Quiz and Superstore. So it wasn't an overnight thing like a band. If you make it, suddenly you're nowhere and suddenly you're number one. It's like climbing a mountain suddenly. It's like, how the hell did we get here? I don't remember climbing this mountain, but I climbed it gradually. It was organic. So I think that helped. That made it a lot easier in some ways.
Because me growing up in the 80s, whilst always a casual music fan back then prior to becoming a teenager when I really dived into hard rock, I got to know you through the likes of Saturday Superstore, which must seem like such an alien concept to kids these days, like a lot of things, but a TV show on Saturday mornings that lasted over 3 hours. I mean, it was a proven format before your show and for many years afterwards too, but was that show hard work? Think I've got to be on for 3 hours now, or was it just a lot of fun vibing off the rest of the crew involved?
But of both. I mean, initially, I'm trying to cram all 3¼ hours into my head, going there, trying to cram the whole route march into my head. Then I suddenly thought, you don't have to. Take it one bit at a time, because after you've done the first bit, someone else is doing something, and then you're back on, and then you're doing something, and then there's a cartoon. So you've got time to rethink. You only have to think one section at a time. But you're also aware 10 million people are watching, so you can't louse up too much or be too awful. So I think you're aware that so many people are watching, but then you think, you know what? If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. And that's fine. If something went wrong, it's funnier, really. But yeah, I learned a lot because you're part of a team on something like that. In radios, it's basically you. You're on air. You may have a producer around, you may not, but it's basically you. But with that, you're a team. You get, the credit and the accolades and things like that. But you've got a team of people upstairs. You've got a director. You've got a floor manager. You've got a producer. You've got a whole team of people behind you, other people you're working with, like Keith Chegwin and Sarah Green. So it's not just you. You learn to be part of a team. And luckily, I learned that very early. I was on stage in plays and playing and singing from a very early age, from like 8 years old. So with that, I learned to be part of a team. I learned to be able to walk on stage, project, a curtain goes back. You've got to make them laugh, entertain them, interest them, but don't bore them. So you've got to go out there on stage, project, speak, and be part of a team because you're working with other people. Being in plays and doing music and things like that for many, many years as a kid actually helps you in that. It helps you be more balanced and be aware of other people, that it's not just you, that it's a team of people.
You've always been an avid music fan. Was you always on the lookout for new music back in the day? I mean, I guess you'd be sent an endless amount. You mentioned coming into the studio with a bag of records, but was you still going to gigs, or did you have a circle of friends who would share music?
Oh, yeah, well, the pluggers would come around with stuff. stuff. They want to take you out for breakfast, take you out for lunch, take you out for dinner. You could probably have 3 breakfasts a morning if you wanted to. But you got to know the guys who had good stuff, or the girls who had good stuff, and those who didn't. And others were pretty good because they'd say, I've got 3 new singles. I don't think this one's for you, really, to be honest, but these 2 you might like. This one especially, I think you will like. So, okay. So you're kind of guided by them and you get to know them. And you know what's coming from their camp or who they're working for, which labels they're working for, and if they have good artists. And often they'd say, do you want to come and have lunch with the artists and meet them? Or do you want to do an interview? I mean, it's like the Heritage Chart. People say, oh, we've got so-and-so. Do you want to interview them? And I said, well, it's only like a 50-minute show. If I interview someone, I feel I've got to be fair and give them 10 or 15 minutes. I said, and that's probably 3 or 4 songs that I can't play.
It's building that rapport as well when you're speaking to someone in an interview format as well, or you're just going to end up asking the same bog standard questions.
Yeah, you do. That's the thing. People you've interviewed, especially on Saturday Superstore, I've interviewed them loads of times. People say, do you want to do an interview with so-and-so? I said, I'm not sure what there is new to say that we haven't said. I don't interview anyway. I just tend to chat with people. I do a lot with Talking Pictures, so we're out on the road. So I'm interviewing different people there. Like a couple of weeks ago, I'm interviewing Maureen Lipman on stage for an hour, or Hayley Mills or Nigel Havers, people like that. So that's different. That's a different area. It's not music, and you're not covering well-trawled ground.
Who are some of your favourite interviewers? Because I think, did you work with Michael Aspel for a while on This Is Your Life? Is anybody else, like Parky or anybody like that?
Yeah, I've done stuff with Parky. I did one of the last chatted with him when he came to a Talking Pictures thing not long before he died. He was great because he was a good interviewer because he just touched the tiller. He didn't have to show off his great knowledge of the person's career, even though he knew it. It's a case of, I always try to wear your knowledge lightly because they don't want to hear you talking about their career. You go, of course you did this and you did that, and then you did this and you did that, and then you got an Oscar for this, and they're sitting there nodding, and the audience is saying, we'd rather hear it from the artist, thank you very much. So there is an element of that Parky was very good. Somebody said something, you go, oh, fascinating. So what happened then? Just shift the boat slightly, so really? That's why I do a lot of the interviews on Talking Pictures. They said, you don't interrupt them. You're not going, yeah, all right, okay, and you're not looking to get in there. So you're having a conversation. And I think that conversational thing is important because you get stuff out you wouldn't normally get out. Tim Rice and Gambaccini and myself went to see Al Martino a few years ago in the 2000s. And he had the very first number 1 here in my heart. Didn't come here again, I think, until the last time he was here when the Beatles broke. So we thought we'd better go and see him. He was number 1 in our Guinness book. So we went to see him. He had a new album. I said, Mike, I'll give you a call. I've got a new album out here. I'd like to do an interview. Yeah, of course, So I'm chatting with him, and rather than asking him the bog standard questions, I said, when you first here, you had your first number 1, and the chart had only just been created. What was the industry like? Was there an industry? Who did you meet? And he said, well, they take me to dinners. I went to places like the Grosvenor and the Dorchester. I said, so who'd be there? He said, well, the Dorchester, they sat me next to Winston Churchill. He said the 2, either his daughters and nieces or something were there as well. And these 2 young men in dicky bows came up and asked them to dance. And it just left me and Churchill. And he turned to me and he said, don't even think about asking me to dance, Al. Which is wonderful. A lovely story. And then there were a couple coming through the tables. And Churchill said to Al Martino, who's that with Ava Gardner? He had no idea who Frank Sinatra was. Who's that with Ava Gardner? Brilliant, because Sinatra was that big here then. He was going through maybe a sort of dip or something, but he had no idea. So rather than saying, tell me about your new album, you're getting some fascinating stuff instead.
I love it. You mentioned Talking Pictures then. Outside of radio, you stayed incredibly creative with other great things, including the Footage Detectives with Noel Cronin. You featured the Granada Cinema in Mansfield, which is just down the road from me. That must be a show that always brings along new surprises. Are you always excited to see what's next?
Yeah, it's great. When we started about 3 years ago, I thought, I'm not quite sure what this is about. And they said, we want you to co-host it with Noel. Noel's never done TV before. He's got into it now, which is great. I don't think it would work with 2 me's or 2 hims, but it works well. Yeah, like when Mansfield came up, I said, oh, Alvin Stardust Country. His mum used to have a boarding house there. I remember that's where his mum bought him a guitar, and he had a little wooden guitar. He got Buddy Holly to sign it, Eddie Cochran to sign it, the Everly Brothers to sign it. Ended up being worth $1.25 million for his mum's boarding house. And the Beatles used to stay there. And she'd either pack them some food to take with them because they couldn't get out because of the screaming fans, or Alvin will pop down with some food for them. And of course, Alvin had already had hits before the Beatles, so they were cool with Alvin. Hey, it's Alvin Stardust. Hey, great, Well, no, what he was then, Shane Fenton. Shane Fenton, wow. But yeah, I mean, it's a lovely, lovely stories.
You're also chairman of the British Plaque Trust, adding the blue plaques to important buildings throughout the country. Our local Regal nightclub in Ripley has one. It was the first place that Harry Webb performed as Cliff Richard back in the day in 1958.
I've been involved in the Heritage Society. Robin Gibb was president, I was vice president, so we did a lot of them. And then we became a little bit disenchanted with how they were doing it. And Robin and myself at about 2010 said, well, why don't we do it? So we started off, Robin sadly no longer with us, but we started it off. And it's worked well, because at the same time, English Heritage said they were going to stop doing it. And they were London-centric anyway, not the rest of the country. They were going to stop. And we thought, okay, we'll carry on then. They're doing a few more now again, but I've shared a few platforms with them. But no, it's worked very well. And quite often, if they can't do it, the English Heritage will say, oh, look, talk to Mike, talk to British Plaque Trust. So we work well with them.
I love the fact that the Regal one in Ripley's got it. And I'm very impressed. I mean, you've worked with Cliff Richard numerous times in different capacities, but I saw him on like the One Show maybe just a year ago, and they were talking about where his name come from. And instantly, he's like, oh, I did a gig in Ripley, Derbyshire. I was like, fair play to you. He just pulled it straight out of this little town in the middle of nowhere. He pulled it out of nowhere.
They were rehearsing, and I think they couldn't get home, so they slept in the hall or something, and they went across to the pub, and the guy promoting it said, we can't have gone over to Harry Webb, he doesn't sound very good. So went over to the pub, and they kicked around names, like somebody said, what about Russ? And somebody said, what about Russ Clifford? He said, that's not bad. What about Cliff Russard? No, I don't like the Russard. He said, the Cliff, I don't mind the Cliff bit. And then someone said, well, instead of Russard, what about Richards? And he said, no, Richards. And then I think Jet Harris said, why don't you just make it Richard with no S? And then everyone will get it wrong and you can correct them. And the idea was for PR that people said it 3 times. Oh, Cliff Richards. No, it's Cliff Richard. Sorry? Cliff Richard. Oh, Cliff Richard, not Cliff Richards. So they'd say it like 4 or 5 times. That was the idea. And it was some people still call him Cliff Richards, bizarrely.
Brilliant. During your time as a broadcaster, presenter, writer, the list is endless. Who have been some of the people you've met or interviewed or maybe just bumped into who've really kind of lit up a room with star quality? Because that is like the X Factor thing. Is there anybody that jumps to mind?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people. I mean, Cliff's very good at that. Very good interviewee. You've only got to sort of push the button and away he goes. He's very good at that. And he knows what you want. And like anybody, if I'm interviewed, I think I won't stray into that area because they might be talking about that area. So you talk as much as you can and then sort of kind of know when you're winding up because your body language and what you're saying and how you're saying it. And he's very good at that as well. Sometimes people are difficult because, I mean, I've interviewed people like Stallone and Al Pacino, and they can be quite different. It's how much you can get away with. I only met Stallone for about 5 minutes before he went on. Never met him before. 3,000 people out there. So what can you get away with? And he sold his dog to fund Rocky. He sold his dog for $50 because he needed the money. And I said, you're all cheering him now. I said, but we're a nation of dog lovers. And this guy sold his dog for $50 because he hadn't got any money. And I thought, I'm chancing my arm here. And he's going, oh, hang my head in shame. I said, but he did go and buy him back from the guy who sold it to, because a week later, he was given like $4 million. So he went back to the actor that he sold the dog to. And he said, I really want to buy my dog back. He said, oh, my kids. He knew that he'd just been given $4 million. He said, oh, my kids have got so attached to it, Mr. Stallone. He said, in a week? He said, oh, yeah, they're devoted to that dog. He said, all right, how much? He said, 500. They sold it back at a profit. And Al Pacino, his manager said, I want to get 5 clips in during the evening. And people were dining. It's like 2,000 people there. And I said, okay. He said, not as okay as you think, because he talks seamlessly. I said, yeah, I've looked at a couple of things on TV where the interviewer didn't get a look in at all. Not at all. I've got to think of a way of doing this, because if he's in the middle of a story and he's seamless and I butt in, then the people are going to go, shut up, we're listening to Pacino here. Why are you butting in, mate? So I thought, I've got to look for a natural pause. So we're sitting there. So I found that touching him worked. When he's going, and so I go, and tap him on the arm, which stopped him for a few seconds, and then I cut in. I use that every time for the 5 links, just stopping. I had to think of a way of doing it.
Genius. Because didn't you do the last ever interview with all 4 members of Queen?
Yes, Queen for an hour. Yeah, the last one. And I was told in no uncertain terms by the BBC governors, by the Queen management, that you are not to ask Freddie about this. Oh, right, okay. And obviously, Freddie had got wind of this. So when they came to Broadcasting House, we were down in the basement. I was thinking, God, how do I get around all those things? And Freddie came over and he put his arm around me. He said, listen, darling, he said, we've known each other long enough. You ask me whatever you want, I'll take the blame. So I said, fantastic.
What a legend. Mike, I'll let you go, but just one last quick question. Still a massive, massive music fan. Music is such a time machine for a lot of us, especially as we get older. An album can transport us back to a specific time or place. Do you have a record which you know when you hear it, you're going to be transported back somewhere and it brings back specific memories?
Only if you don't hear it too much. If you hear it too much, that wears off that specific memory. You know, if you hear a song a lot, it's only when you hear something you haven't heard for a long, you go, oh my goodness, I haven't heard that since. That's when it brings back a memory. So anything probably that you haven't heard for a long time, because most things now you can hear a lot on the radio, you can go on Spotify, you can hear anything you want, a song you like, you can hear as much as you want. The one I spare myself is a track called Survival on the Yes album, the first Yes album. I only allow myself to play it once or twice a year because I don't want to get fed up with it. No one ever plays it on the radio, so I'm fine. I allow myself to play it once or twice a year because I don't want to get bored with it.
Brilliant stuff. Mike, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I want to wish you all the best with the Heritage Chart and all the other great projects which you've got going off. But I appreciate you taking some time to chat with me.
Thank you, Rob, very much. Bless you. Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the rest of the evening, mate. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Speak soon. Take care.
Massive thank you to Mike Reed for taking some time away from the Heritage Chart and all his other projects to speak to me here on the Straight to Video podcast. What an amazing career he's had and continues to champion music so hard. It's really great to see and hear. If you want to learn more about what some of our favourite bands and artists from back in the day are up to, then head on over to www.heritagechart.co.uk to check out the chart listings and cast your vote, or you can also find them on Facebook and Twitter. Over at our 80s video shop in Overton, Derbyshire, just 10 minutes from junction 28 of the M1, which is open at weekends, we're just 1 month away from Tape Stock 2. This is going to be a really fun day on Saturday, October the 5th, where video collectors from all over the country are going to meet at our tiny little shop to buy and trade tapes, talk films and watch some screenings in our movie room. If this sounds like your thing, please check out the event page on Facebook and hopefully see you in a few weeks' time. So that's it for this week's episode of the podcast. Already, as I mentioned, I have a bunch of new chats in the bag which I can't wait to share. So until then, please make sure to always be kind. Please rewind and unwind, and I'll speak to you all real soon.